Where are you living now?
Windsor, same place, 6 years.
You still haven't left England?
No.
You still feel strongly about that?
Well, I mean, I just don't belong anywhere else. I sold my house in Los Angeles, they pulled it down.
Wasn't this where Greta Garbo lived?
Yeah, and John Gilbert. And
you referred to it once, I believe, as an orgy house.
Yeah, well, someone else lived in there. And if those walls could have talked, they can't now, thank Christ. I was in it after that.
Well, now, you're one of the few that stayed in England. I mean, you and McCartney and Jimmy Page, I guess, of the...
The Who?
Yeah, all right. But, I mean, so many have left.
Yeah.
And Rod Stewart said to me, no matter what anybody tells you, it's all down to money. It's because of the taxes, and that's why we've all left.
I think it's probably basically absolutely right.
But you've made quite a lot of money, and yet you still live there.
I've made a hell of a lot of money. I still live there. The taxes in England are only 60% now. And since I voted socialist at the last election, and then the Conservatives got in and lowered the taxes to 60%. No, I've always had enough money to live on. I've never really wanted to live anywhere else but England. I mean, I had the house in Los Angeles for convenience sake. Do
you still have to lead a very sort of reclusive life in England?
No, I don't live a reclusive life at all in England. Not at all, because I'm involved with my soccer team, which I go out all the time with the soccer team to matches and stuff like that. I've never really led a reclusive life.
Well, there was all this talk that you had to have telexes coming in, you couldn't have a phone.
Oh, I don't have a phone, no, because it would drive me around the twist. I have a phone I can phone out. I'm not a recluse, but the phone drives you crazy. I mean, it really does. And, half the people that get it, phone the fans find out your number, and it's just ridiculous. So I decided no phones except that I can phone out. And I do have a phone where my housekeepers live. And if anyone wants to get me in touch with an emergency, they can get in touch with me. But no, I like a little bit of tranquility.
Empty Garden, did you write that specifically as a tribute to John, or did it just turn out that way? Or did you tell Bernie to,
No, when John died, I wanted to write something, and I thought, well, if you're going to write something, don't do it now, for God's sake. Let time pass. And then I suddenly thought, well, you can't write lyrics. So, you really start. I didn't tell Bernie to write anything, and Bernie came over last August or whatever to Paris with a bunch of lyrics, one of which was Empty Garden. And he didn't push it forward or anything. I just looked at it and I said, is this what I think? It's fairly obvious what it was about. And it said everything I wanted to say without being sort of too cloying and everything. And it was one of those Taupin lyrics where I thought it was so perfect for me that I just sat down and wrote the song immediately, and the song came out straight away. I just looked at the words, and there was the melody coming out.
Welcome back to The Inside Track. I'm Lisa Robinson. One of rock's most enduring and colorful stars certainly is Elton John, who in the early and mid-'70s had a phenomenal string of hits that he wrote with Bernie Taupin. Now Elton is back with a hugely successful record and a sellout cross-country concert tour. When we sat down to talk in New York, Elton talked candidly about his outrageous mid-'70s image.
I did ridiculous things in those days. I mean, I don't mind being generous, but I did go over the top. I was totally over the top. It was a fantasy. The whole thing was just crazy. I wanted a rhinestone Volkswagen at one point.
Were you ever embarrassed to read any of that stuff, or did you think it was all kind of amusing?
I was amusing at the time. I'd probably be very embarrassed to look back at it and read it now. I still got all the clippings somewhere. Thank God I had the best time doing it. It took me 2 years afterwards to sort of recover from it. But it was fantasy. It was just craziness. But because it wasn't preconceived. I never wanted to be a singer. I never wanted to do this, be a star. I just wanted to write songs with Bernie, and bang, wang, and it all happened. And we had records in the charts. We never lost money on a tour. Money was coming in right, left and centre. And I never had time to think about it all. I was just so knocked out to be in the charts with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and playing with Leon Russell that it was very innocent. The only reason I started singing was because the people said, well, Empty Skies come out, you got to get a band together. And it was all an accident. That's the whole thing. It was just a whole ridiculous accident. And that's why I think for those 6 years that everything did go over the top. I went totally over the top. Fabulous. And that's what made me so depressed in '76 and come off the road, because there was nothing else in my life. It was Lennon who really said, for Christ's sake, stop, you're going to end up like a maniac. And that was in '75, and a year later actually the penny dropped. I said, no, I'm having a great time. What are you doing? He said, you'll see. And a year later I really saw. And that's why it could never be the same again. There will never be that innocence, or there will never be that magic. It will always be different somehow. I mean, I'll enjoy it, but I'll never enjoy it as much as I did then, because it was like a dream. It was like winning the pools or winning the lottery or something like that. It was incredible.
What do you think it was about what you did then that not only made Robert Hilburn write that rave review, which brought all the attention to everything, but made so many people sort of look at you as this kind of savior of rock and roll or something, or this sensitive songwriter who yet could still have these unbelievably wild, flamboyant stage performances and bridge that gap?
It's a mixture of things. I mean, I did have the radio stations behind me. I was the darling of FM radio at that time too. A lot of people were deceived by the Elton John album sleeve and probably the orchestra on it, and the fact that we were more or less a rock and roll band, just piano, bass and drums, and then I did wear funny things. And I think it brought a lot of escapism. I didn't take myself too seriously. Singer-songwriters at that particular time did sort of have that sort of dull image. I mean, it was like, you know, there weren't any flamboyant singer-songwriters around. It was James Taylor, Carole King, and selling loads of records. But and apart from Joe Cocker and Mad Dogs and Eastman, there weren't many sort of flamboyant sort of groups, and they hardly were glamorous. And I was hardly glamorous. I was ridiculous, and I think the ridiculousness caught the people's attention. I mean, I remember Steve Stills standing at Fillmore East, saying, "I'm not sure about this, but I got to stay and have a look," because nobody knew what I was going to do next, least of all me, and what I was going to wear. I mean, people said, "You can't do that." I said, "I can. Why not? Nonsense, dear boy." And I was just having a ball, and but the music was there. And on top of that, people knew that they were going to get entertained and see something a little different to what was happening. Hey, there's this pudgy guy standing on a piano. Why is he doing that? But they liked it. Was
some of the things you wore. I've been looking back at some old pictures. These big feathers.
I've got them all at home, and I always take people. I want to see a tour of the house, and I take them. And I say, "Do you want to see the costume room?" And I go in there, and these hideous shoes. I mean, believe me. I could build a national park, I think, with the trees that have been chopped down to provide heels for my shoes, and just unbelievable things. I just look back at them now. But I mean, I just can't believe that I wore them. But I mean, they're there. I did wear them. I mean, some of them I look like Diana Ross in mahogany. Well, hardly Diana Ross, but I mean, but
they looked right, didn't they?
But they didn't.
I mean, even that duck costume in the park a few years ago was, I mean, it's hilarious, some of that stuff. I mean, it was tremendously witty, I thought, a lot of those
I've always tried to be a little humorous as far as that, because, I mean, I wasn't the archetypal rock and roll, lean, thin, Bowie, Jagger sort of person. So, I had to I just wanted, it wasn't a preconceived, I'm going to go out on stage and wear silly clothes. When I came to the Troubadour, I was always wearing Mr. Freedom clothes anyway, which were very popular in England, winged boots and stuff like that. Still got those, but I mean, in America they sort of hadn't caught on, and then the glasses and everything sort of snowballed.
When did you buy the football club? When did all that start? It was late 70s, wasn't it?
I became chairman in 76, but I became involved in 73 when I did a concert at the club, and they invited me to become a director. And then in 76, I became a controlling shareholder. And this is the fifth season I'm chairman. And we were in the 4th division then, and now we're second in the 2nd division. And this year it looks like we're going into 1st. So in 5 years we'll go from 4th to 1st, which is, I mean, it's an achievement. But people won't understand what that is because they don't see the different sort of work that goes into that. Is having meetings with the local council, going to bank meetings, trying to find accommodation for players, doing this, doing that, having board meetings at the club all the time, business meetings. But being involved with the team that are just as special to me in that business as my team are to me in the music business, and people that I really like, sort of a family type thing.
Did you have problems with this football club in terms of your image, with not only the whole sort of flamboyant rock star thing, but with that whole coming out saying bisexuality,
no, not at all.
Blah, blah.
No, they've accepted it totally. I thought I'd have a lot of resistance to that, but I haven't. And obviously people gossip behind my back, and you have to expect that because we all gossip behind each other's backs, or we all like to gossip. But quite honestly, the people in soccer in England have treated me with the utmost respect. And I think British people, especially the British public, like you to be up front with them. I can't, I'm glad I got it off my chest.
Well, why do you think it was made such a big deal? I mean,
well, it didn't make such a big deal. I mean, it didn't hit England until 2 years after the Cliff Jar thing in Rolling Stone, you know. The English people didn't make it into a big deal. I think it affected me far more popularity-wise here, with the Midwest, and, you know, this country's far more religious than England, I think, as far as maniacal religion goes, I call it. And I can understand it's not everyone's cup of tea as well. I just had to go, please or offend, that's how I am. If you don't understand it, fair enough, I can understand why, but I'm not going to go around flaunting it and appearing on every talk show and being, a faggot about it, because I can't stand faggots, you know.
If you're not singing lyrics that you've written, is it ever uncomfortable for you to sing some of Bernie's lyrics, or does he...
It used to get uncomfortable when he soured, you know, when he was writing all those sort of really... like Blue Moves, there's not many happy songs on that. And Taupin, on this new album, there's 2 tracks, Robot and Where Have All the Good Times Gone, which Robot's my lyrics, really. Bernie just really added another 2 or 3 lines. There's only 2 or 3 lines in the whole song. And Good Times, I made him write the lyric to my melody, which he's never done before.
Why not just do them yourself?
I'm not capable of it. I'm capable of doing 2 or 3 lines and an odd title here and there, but I don't want to force it, and I know if I did one, it would come straight out. And if I wrote a whole lyric, I'd be sitting and working at it for 6 or 7 hours, and that for me isn't natural. I can write a song just like that. I can think of a title just like that. I can write an instrumental just like that. But I'm not capable of putting things down on paper. I'm capable of saying them, but it's not the same as writing something down on paper. So I think, well, you know, you can't have everything. I write melodies that I like. I just can't, for the moment, sit down and write a whole lyric. At least I'm doing 2 or 3 lines in some of the songs now.
It really takes you such a short amount of time to write these songs?
Like
some of these amazing hooks in songs like Benny and the Jets or, you know, Saturday Nights. I mean, some of those songs they sound so perfect. They just click like that for you?
Well, the Yellow Brick Road album was written in Jamaica in 3 days, 21 songs in 3 days. Well, the band went to watch a rehearsal. I was stuck in Kingston, afraid to go out of the hotel room. But in isolation, if I'm in the mood to write, and I was there, because I thought I got to write something, and I didn't want to go outside the hotel, so I really enjoyed writing. I don't write very much. I have sort of 6 months off, and then it all comes out. And if I write for 3 or 4 days and write 30 or 40 songs, maybe. And that it is, but then I may not write again for 7 or 8 months. And I probably won't use half of those 30 or 40 songs anyway.
Where do all those hooks come from?
I don't know. I don't think about writing melodies at all until I sit down at the piano. I don't sort of hum things on the tour and get a tape recorder. But initially, all the old songs, I used to write them with the Taupin lyric, play them over and over again like 6 or 7 times and forget them. But they were stored up in there. It's like a little memory bank. I know when I feel like writing something, I'm going to do it, and it always comes out okay.
How is it still exciting for you to get out on a stage and play, say, to 6,000 people when you've done, 500,000 in Central Park?
Well, there won't just be 6,000 people.
No, but I mean, many nights of that, when you've done these amazing kind of one-off things, like Dodger Stadium, Russia, Central Park, and the kind of high that must come from that.
But those highs are very few and far between us, because they are literally one-offs. Dodger Stadium, although I played a lot of outside venues, Dodger Stadium was a high, because it was really, we pulled it off. We pulled Dodger Stadium off, we pulled the park off, and we pulled Russia off. But those things they're the little highlights. They don't come around all the time. I mean, the Garden, for me, doing 7 nights at the Garden was great for me. I always remember that. But those things crop up. They're events, and you turn them into events. And if you've got enough, you have to turn them into events. You have to make them successful, because if you don't, then people won't come and see you next time. It's like the park thing. I was so lucky with the weather, but it was like a party, and people really had a good time. Whether half the people there, or 2/3 of the people there, probably never bought one of my records, but they just went because it was a nice day and it was something to do and it was music and it really worked. So you have to work at those things. You have to have a little bit of savvy and a bit of stage experience to carry them off. And they're very big challenges. They're the sort of things where you think, am I going to carry it off? Whereas a normal gig, you know you can. Those things, you need the little bit extra adrenaline, and they're good for you. They just push you a little bit further.
Did you feel at one time you were finished?
No, never felt that at all. Never. I just grew to accept the fact that it would never be the same as it was, with albums zooming in at #1, because you do that because everything was on a momentum. It was a brilliantly oiled machine, because we just kept working. We were having a good time. We loved working. We loved making the albums. And then that momentum lasted for 6 years, and then, as I said before, that will never be the same again. So no, I wasn't worried about being finished. I just have to cope with the fact that I loved all that, but basically I don't really want that anymore. But there's another side of me that would be sorry to see it go because I enjoyed it. It's just having to cope with the fact that you have to be your back. You know, you have to start ringing out again to find out where your record is next week, instead of expecting it to zoom in at #1, which is kind of back down to earth again, I suppose.
You've been a fan of rock and roll and really some wonderful music, and people yet, I think, tend to think of you as sort of middle of the road. Was there a time, perhaps also when you were being criticized, writing the same songs as you wrote 10 years ago? That kind of thing. Does that bother you?
Yeah, a bit, because you can only be yourself. I mean, I only try and write melodic songs that, you know, George Gershwin only tried. I'm not comparing myself with Gershwin, for Christ's sake, but I'm a melody person, so I'm not the lyric part of it. I just write the melody, and I always try and write nice melodies that I like. And there's nothing wrong with having a style of your own. I know I've written songs that have been too samey sometimes, and I'm the first to admit it. But I have tried, I think, in my career to try and write varied songs. I always resented people that would criticise me without ever knowing exactly what I felt, because I'm a fan of music, and if I can try and help or play something and push something towards, I'll always do it, because that's something that's happening in England now. There's so many good young groups writing so many good songs. The songwriting's really getting stronger in England now, because someone like Costello, I think, is perfect. He's a really fantastic songwriter. Costello's first album blew me away. And I think he's probably could be one of the best songwriters England's ever produced. And you need that time to develop as a songwriter. And I think the quality of songs that are coming out of England at the moment from groups is much, much better in the last 2 or 3 years than it.
Really? Who else?
Human League, fantastic. Duran Duran, people like that. Police, I mean, well, I don't really lump Police in that category. They're sort of, but no, there's a great lot of singles coming out. Haircut 100, I really love. They're sweet, and the Altered Images. Girl in Altered Images is so gorgeous. She's so sweet. And the band's having fun now. They're dressing up and admitting that they like looking good, you know.
There's been a lot written about this unhappy childhood that you had, and how your father wasn't approving of the things that you did, and then you said these things about him in the press, and then he said, I can't imagine why Elton is saying these things about me, and blah, blah, blah. Has that all been exaggerated, or is that...
No, that was true. Basically what it was is my father really didn't want me to become a rock and roller. He wanted me to join the Air Force or get a good job in a bank or something like that. And of all my family, since my success, nobody in my family, on my mother's side or my father's side, and I'm friendly with them both, has ever asked me for any money. When I played in Liverpool, I played a couple of concerts in Liverpool quite some time ago. My father came out of the Air Force, found that things weren't so easy in Civilian Street, and then had 4 kids in 4 years, which I thought was rather unfortunate for me, because he never liked kids. And I went to say, I thought, well, listen, time's too short, you know, let's go and make this up, this is ridiculous. And I stayed at his house for the weekend, and I bought him an estate car, because he had a little Mini, and it wasn't big enough to take the kids around. And a week later he wrote to me asking me for £40,000 to buy a farm, you know. And so I just said, that's it, and I saw red at that. And then maybe I shouldn't have said what I did, but then he sold his story to the newspapers. You know, blood's thicker than water. I care about his kids. I hope they're okay. His eldest son plays the piano, so now he's gone to Royal College of Music in London. He's been told that he's got to be a better pianist than Elton John. You know, it's one of those frightening syndromes. Great Santini or something like that. I don't bear him any malice. I just feel sorry for him. My mother introduced me to rock and roll. I didn't. She was the one that used to buy the records every week. My mother's always had very young taste in music. My father was always into George Shearing and people like that, who I'm grateful for him influencing me with them, because I grew up with George Shearing records and I really loved George Shearing's piano playing.
But was this something that was like a burning drive or ambition, or did you know that you were talented enough that you could do this? Did you want to do this for many years before you fell into it?
No, because as a kid you don't think about it. You just stand in front of a mirror and sort of mime to it, you know. My parents never pushed me into that. I just had, you know, I just loved rock music, and I used to mime to records and try and play like Jerry Lee Lewis. I could never play like Jerry Lee Lewis because his technique's too good. But Little Richard was far more me. And Fats Domino. Later on, I never discovered Fats Domino until later on, but I'm a vampire, and not a vampire, a vamper. And that's Little Richard was me, and I just loved his voice anyway. And he wrote some great songs. He wrote a lot of those songs.
How did that whole thing, I mean, other than the personal effect it must have had on you because you were friends. But what did it make you think about your life and in terms of this whole kind of
Doesn't change my mind at all. I mean,
you didn't change any.
No, if someone's going to do something
bodyguards and stuff.
No, it's I can understand McCartney doing it or something like that because there's so many crazy people who would probably think, oh, now one's gone, let's have a go at the others. Especially in this bloody country, because I come from a country where we don't have handguns and stuff like that, so it's never bothered me. You don't walk around the streets in London thinking that someone may cost you over the head or something like that, but they won't shoot you. So no, it never really bothered me that. I don't think about that sort of thing.